The League is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization of women and men established to promote political responsibility through informed, active participation in government. And I thank you for coming tonight to actively take part in this forum. We do not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates or parties, but we do from time to time take a position on a political issue after careful studies. I would like to thank all of you for coming, and I would like to thank our two candidates for coming tonight, Beth Gaines and John Heidahl, candidates for El Dorado County Board of Supervisors, District 1. I also would like to point out Virginia. Raise your hand, Virginia. She's a member of the League, and she's the one that's collecting cards. And if you need a card during the forum, you can raise your hand and she'll give it to you. I can tell that we have millions of questions, and we may not be able to get to all of them, and some of them might be similar to another question, so we will combine questions sometimes. So Elaine, raise your hand, is the timer, and she will give you a 30-second notice and a stop notice. And Kathy is the card sorter. She's got her hands full tonight, I can see that. And John is helping wherever needed. And so I would like to thank you for coming, and I will let the candidates introduce themselves. I will tell you about the format. They will have 3 minutes for opening comments and 3 minutes for their closing comments and 2 minutes to answer a question. And the person who answers the question first is entitled to a 30-second rebuttal. You just have to let me know. All of the candidates will answer all of the questions. The League does not allow questions specific to one candidate. You could ask them those questions after the forum. And I also would like to ask you for time and decorum to hold your applause till the very end. And so with that, I would like to invite John Heidahl to give his opening comments first.
Good evening, I'm John Heidahl, and after 41 years in the aerospace industry, working for Aerojet Northrop Grumman, I retired 2 years ago and decided I needed to do more with my life than sit around in retirement and watch television or something else. So I've decided to seek the position of supervisor for District 1. I've lived in El Dorado Hills for 38 years. My wife Eileen and I raised our 5 daughters here. All 5 daughters attended Oak Ridge High School and graduated from Oak Ridge High School and subsequently graduated from 4-year universities. So we're really proud and pleased to be part of the El Dorado Hills community. I do want to mention that this particular facility is named the Norm Rao Pavilion. For many of you who remember Norm, Norm was a good friend of mine. He moved into El Dorado Hills in 1978, the same year we did. We worked on a lot of projects together. And this facility was memorialized in Norm's name after his passing because of all the work he did in the CSD and for the community. So I wanted to recognize that. In conjunction with that, Norm was also my instrumentation test engineer at Aerojet for many of the projects I worked on. That's where we developed our very close relationship. That's where we became sparring partners, a lot of things. We balanced each other from the standpoints of pros and cons, and we were able to accomplish a lot of things in this community. One final note, when this facility was built 26.5 years ago, I was the chairman of the park task force that was appointed by the then CSD board to serve as volunteers for the community to help develop the design, work with the architects, work with staff for this 40-acre facility. So I'm also very proud of that history. I'm running for supervisor because I want to change the way the county operates. I want to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the county government. There's a lot of things we need in this community. Better road maintenance, stopping the gridlock traffic, more senior facilities. So there's 3 primary goals that I've established. The first is to work with the Board of Supervisors to create a structurally balanced budget. Because it all comes down to financing. If we don't have a structurally balanced budget, where we know that the expenditures balance the revenues without pulling out of reserves. In normal times, you always pull out of reserves when you have to make investments for capital improvements. But in normal times, then you end up with a diminishing capability to provide services. That's kind of where our board is today. So I'm going to work to improve that. The second thing is I want to maintain as much open space in El Dorado Hills as possible. I was the spokesperson for a group that worked here with the Community Service District Board to put the measure on the ballot for the advisory vote for the 90-acre golf course to retain that as open space recreation. Again, I'm very proud of that. I'm also a strong supporter of Measure E. The last measure that was passed, basically to stop the paper roads process and to make sure that our county government provides infrastructure in terms of roadways at the time construction happens. The last goal I have is to work on senior services and housing choices to make sure that our aging demographics, our population has choices in terms of the housing provisions that they have based upon the needs of that particular individual. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Good evening, everyone. I am Beth Gaines, and I'm running for Dorado County District 1 Supervisor. We live in a beautiful community, and I'm proud to call this my home. We have great schools, great restaurants, great town center. I'm passionate, though, about preserving the way it is, our uniqueness in this community. However, I am concerned with the lack of leadership. We have problems with crime, and I think everybody's been touched by crime. Everyone feels a little bit less safe with all the things going on. There's no denying it. We do have a problem with crime. We have single moms home with young children. We have our seniors. We have our retired folks. We have stay-at-home moms, and I want them to feel safe. I have a history of working with regional law enforcement. I have a track record. I fought alongside Scott Jones when we offered the governor some sort of alternative to AB 109, which has turned out to be a disaster. I fought also on against Prop 47, the early release program, which released low-level criminals. We have a problem with traffic also. I don't know if you noticed, on El Dorado Hills Boulevard, we have little patches being repaired. With all the money that we send up to Placerville, why are we not able to just repave El Dorado Hills? We have to do it with little feet of segments. I think that this is something we should take advantage of, and we certainly pay for it. And by the way, we do pay a lot of state tax dollars and local taxes, and yet we still have the crumbling roads. That's a problem, and I want to work on that. I have always had an open door policy. Always been accessible at the state capitol. I will continue that policy. I feel I am a public servant, and we deserve accessible, accountable, and transparent government without raising a dime more in taxes. I'll be a fiscal watchdog for the county. I work hard to protect our hard-earned tax dollars, always have, always will. I'm a small businesswoman, and that's why I first ran for office, was to protect and help businesses thrive while they exist, especially in the business part. I think we need to become, why can't we work toward becoming an innovative hub of creativity and that will create a lot of excitement for El Dorado Hills. I'm excited about that. So I'm going to be working on the business part and marketing that.
Beth, I think, can you hear her when she talks? Maybe hold the microphone a little closer next time.
Okay.
So you will answer the first question. So I guess John will.
Okay.
You may have answered this already, but how long have you lived in El Dorado County? And if elected, will you pledge to serve out your 4-year term as supervisor?
I've lived continuously in El Dorado County for 38 years. We moved into our home in November of 1978, raised our family here with no interruptions. If elected, I commit, barring any health issues or family situations that would change my decision to serve out the full 4-year term as your supervisor and seek a second term, provided my health remains good and everything else is on stable keel. So,
Thank you, Beth.
I am running for El Dorado County Supervisor in District 1, and I fully intend to fulfill those duties. I'm honored to have your support. And is that the...
And how long have you lived in El Dorado County?
And I've lived in El Dorado Hills for a couple of years. I've represented El Dorado County for 6 years, and we started our family on Cambridge Road in Cameron Park 31 years ago and had our first couple of children. And then I moved down the hill to be closer to my mom, who was ailing at that time, and helped her out there.
Okay, so you will answer the next question first. So you always get to answer 2 questions in a row. What is the source of your campaign funds? Do you take funds from developers or big business?
Well, I've been a state assemblywoman for 6 years now, and I've been very good at fundraising, so I've taken money from whoever supports my candidacy. They support me. I'm beholden to no one, and I have taken money from every industry, probably, if you look into it. And I'm proud of that. I've been able to raise money because people believe in me. They support my campaign because they know I'm a public servant. I have open door accessibility, and I listen to everyone and all concerned. And I think that's the best way to govern, is to be of the people. And when people give me money, I'm grateful and happy about it.
Thank you, John.
I have established a policy of not accepting any developer or special interest money in my campaign. A large part of my campaign is self-funded, and the rest of it comes from donations from a lot of friends. The single largest donation I have is $500. So that tells you the grassroots effort that my campaign is all about. It's about representing people and not having any association that could be accused of making decisions based upon preference for organizations, for special groups, for political parties, for whatever. That's my association.
John, rebuttal?
I think every dollar that comes out of every person and every corporation is somewhat special interest. So if someone is giving you $500, or I think that you said someone was giving you $1,500, just a good friend, believe me, there's special interest. Everyone has their feelings and their thoughts, and I think it's important to listen to everyone, both sides, and then make a wise, sound decision.
John, you answer this next question first.
Okay.
How exactly would your open door policy work, and what would be the best way for constituents to reach you?
My open door policy would be I'd maintain an office both in Placerville, as part of the Board of Supervisors Chambers area, and then also in El Dorado Hills. But in deference to what's being done currently, I would try to locate my office in either one of the El Dorado Hills Community Services District facilities or in our El Dorado Hills Fire Department facility. Since the county will pay for rental of space, I would like to see that money come back to our community. So it would be a transfer from county money to a local agency, either the fire department, the CSD. So that's to be developed as we work through that. But that's kind of the theme I have, is to try to make sure that money gets used for the community purposes as opposed to just going to other entities. The second part of that?
Second part of the question. How exactly does your open door policy work,
And what is the best way for constituents?
Best way to constituency. What I intend to do is to create a similar council to what Sam Bradley had many years ago, which was called a community council. It was established and appointed members of the community, volunteered, to basically act as representatives for the community, to provide information on the needs of the community, to respond to proposals from the county on various ordinances that were out there, but to have a direct interaction. I also want to establish a Facebook page that allows people to communicate actively, and I would be doing reporting probably on a weekly basis of what are the current things that are happening in the county and what to look forward to. That's the most important part, is what's ahead of us that people need to be aware of so they can do their research, do their preparation for county meetings and stuff when decisions are made. So that's the two things I would probably work on the most, is reestablishing the community council, and then also making sure that we use social media networks to provide information.
I've always had open door policy. My office has always been open, and it would continue to be. I would invite everyone to come in and speak with me. We have an active small business advisory council that meets on a regular basis, and we have about 30 businesses that come, and we meet over at a local hotel, and we have breakfast together, and we have speakers come and tell us what are the latest regulations, what are the things that we need to look out for. As a small business owner, I'm very concerned with all the regulations that are coming down from the state. I fought long and hard against new regulations, and I think that it's important to continue to do so and keep small businesses abreast of what are the new things. The ADA, Americans with Disability Act, that has been largely abused in so many ways, and it hurts small businesses. You can change the shade of blue from year to year, where you have to have the pavement a certain quarter of an inch slope for wheelchairs. I understand that. We all want accessibility for everyone. But to keep changing the rules and regulations on small businesses, it is costing small businesses a fortune. Also, we live in a litigious society, unfortunately, and frivolous lawsuits have been something that I've fought also. So just to have an open door of communication with not only businesses, but everyone, I think is really important. Not sure where my local office will be held, and I'll be looking into that. It'll be easy to contact me.
And Bill, you will answer the next question. What do you want to do, rebuttal?
A little over 4 years ago, El Dorado County Board of Supervisors established what was called the Community and Economic Development Advisory Council. That was a group of people, a group of residents that started out to represent the whole county and look at what was going on in county government and to make changes to that. One of the groups, the subsets of that, was called Regulation Reform, or Reg Reform. That group met many, many times to address the kinds of things that Beth was talking about. How do we make the current policies of the county more conducive for good businesses to move into our area? The net result of that was very mixed results. We have an approved targeted general plan amendment, which basically is a general plan amendment now, and changes in our zoning ordinances that happened as a result of that, and many of us were not happy with the net result of that. That isn't necessarily all associated with businesses, but that group ended up moving way beyond just reg reform and doing other things that were not necessarily fully supported by the community at large.
Thank you. Beth, well, you did a rebuttal, so Beth answers this question first.
Okay.
So many politicians seem to be more loyal to government employees than to taxpayers. Where do you stand?
I've always fought long and hard for taxpayers, for hard-working families that are trying to pay their taxes and raise their kids, and they really don't want to be bothered with what the government is doing. I'm for smaller, limited government and more power to the people, to local districts. I have never been in favor of big government. I've served for 6 years. Before these 6 years, I was home raising my 6 kids and running our small family business. That's what I'm most proud of. But I get in here and I start fighting big government, and it's hard. It's like an uphill battle. So I will continue always to fight government control, telling us how to live our lives, how to run our businesses, who we can hire, and how we can't fire them, and when they can have their meals and breaks and rest. And it's just ridiculous how hard it is to run a business now. So I've forgotten the original question. I'm sorry.
So many politicians seem to be more loyal to government employees than to taxpayers. Where do you stand?
I think there's good, hardworking government employees, but number one, I think we are elected to represent the taxpayers of El Dorado County.
John.
So I believe that the responsibility of the Board of Supervisors is to represent the taxpayers, the residents, the voters of the community. The labor force and all the working relationships that you have and interacting with those kinds of groups is a very, very important part of that. But they don't rule, they don't dictate, they don't determine the outcome of what the board needs to accomplish. The board needs to be firm when they establish policy and when they provide direction to the directors of the various staff members that are there to make sure that everybody understands what their responsibilities are. One of the things I advocate for is charter statements at the county level. And a charter statement would define what it is that that organization is responsible for. It's a simple fundamental thing that private practice has been using for many, many years, and yet it appears the county government doesn't have department level charter statements. So they really don't know what their sense of ownership is, and I think that's where it starts. Is if they recognize their charter, they'll recognize their responsibility to the taxpayers as employees, and we're all going to work together. But you do have to establish trust. You do have to work very integrally with the labor force because they are the people who provide the services, and that's all important to us. A motivated labor force will provide excellent services. A demoralized labor force simply won't. So we need to make sure that the relationships are there, but the taxpayers won't.
John, you will answer the next question first. Why are El Dorado Hills taxpayer dollars being spent to take over the Latrobe Fire Department? To date, how much has been spent in Latrobe so far, and what is scheduled over the next 10 years?
The Latrobe annexation was accomplished based upon a recommendation that came from the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors have been struggling with how do they pay for the necessary supplements that the fire departments have needed to stay solvent. It used to be called aid to fire. So the board, and through a study that was done by LAFCO, Citygate was the name of the consultant was done. The result of that study said that consolidation of fire districts, standardization of services, is the right way for the fire service to move forward given the limited economic budget there is. El Dorado Hills led the charge of trying to establish 3 separate areas where we would have 3 separate fire departments that have been consolidated. That was not successful. In looking at our local area, we determined that it was necessary to start the process for everybody else, so we looked into annexing Latrobe. We did annex Latrobe, and the net result has been an unfavorable set of financial circumstances where the agreement was originally put in place said that there would be a lot of continuation of the volunteers in Latrobe and providing services to the fire department, and what happened is they all resigned. So that meant we had to put additional firefighters, paid firefighters down there, given the commitment we had as a community. But right now, there are significant benefits to all of El Dorado Hills in terms of providing that service that comes to everybody, including Latrobe. We are one district, we are one organization, and in my opinion, we need to start separating the costs associated with things in the forecast. We are one district, and we get a lot of benefits in the El Dorado Hills portion of our district as a result of that annexation.
Beth.
I sure hope we do get some benefit in El Dorado Hills for this annexation. I seriously doubt that the Board of Supervisors would have approved of your votes actually to annex Latrobe the way that it was annexed. When we look into it, the building was bought and then we found mold in it, so now we have to build a new firehouse to the tune of $3.5 million. Is it more than that? I think it is actually more than that. And then the volunteers all left. They all jumped ship. They didn't want this annexation. Latrobe didn't need or want this annexation. We came in there. Anybody ever go to those breakfasts in Latrobe put on by the volunteers of the fire department? They were wonderful. But those volunteers all jumped ship, and now we have to replace them with full-time, union-paid workers. And that's going to cost us a lot of money. Many people in the know say that it's going to cost over $1 million every year for El Dorado Hills residents. That's you guys who live in El Dorado Hills, and me, and John, forever. Doesn't go away in 20 years or 30 years. It's forever. I seriously doubt the Board of Supervisors would have approved this and support this annexation. And by the way, what do we get out of that for all that money that we're on the hook for?
Nothing. I have to rebut this.
Is this a rebuttal?
The Board of you need to understand some of the history of this. There's a long history. Latrobe Fire District was getting approximately 6% of the property tax dollars for providing their fire service. Our El Dorado Hills Fire Department gets approximately 17%. And part of that is we started out as the El Dorado Hills County Water District, not as a fire protection district. The Board of Supervisors, and Supervisor Michalaka, who's here, was party to an agreement that was established that created a shift in what's called AB 8, Assessment Bill 8, Assembly Bill 8, rules that allow El Dorado Hills to receive 17% of the property tax dollars associated with the annexation of Latrobe in exchange for making that annexation. So they were getting 6%, now we're getting 17%. So I don't know why anyone would say the Board of Supervisors didn't support this. They passed that agreement. They enacted it, and now we're receiving 17%. The difficulty that we're looking at is there isn't a lot of forecast for growth in Latrobe, so we won't recover that money quickly.
The next question goes to Beth first, because this was a rebuttal, but it's also on the same topic. What can you do if elected supervisor of District 1 to get us back to the original agreement and eliminate this tremendous tax burden on El Dorado Hills taxpayers?
Absolutely, I think it's a debacle. It's a big problem, and I think there have been many decisions on the fire board that have been mismanaged. That there was a grand jury report, a grand jury investigation, and came out with a scathing report of mismanagement and abuse of tax dollars. So I will work very hard to unravel what we can, but it's going to be very difficult, and it's a fix that we're in, and we really have to think about, is this the person that we want to elect on a higher level at the Board of Supervisors?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
No.
Yes. And I hope they enjoy those taxes. The choice is clear. Raising taxes, someone who is fine with raising taxes, and a fiscal watchdog. I've got the record to prove it. I don't want to take any more of your money. I think it's all about priorities, and I think it's very important that we watch every dollar that comes in from the residents.
John?
So I agree, it is very important to watch every dollar. But there's a lot of things that Beth is overlooking. One of the things that she's overlooking is the fact that when you make decisions relative to budgets, you have to have knowledge of what your forecasts are for future revenues and what your expenditures are. If you look at the current Board of Supervisors budget, which is approximately $500,000, $500,000 a year, roughly half of that is discretionary, they have a current reserve at the Board of Supervisors level that's less than the El Dorado Hills Fire Department reserves. Our annual budget is about $17 million, and we have reserves about $17 million. So when people talk about reserves and overexpending money, we make expenditures on things like capital improvements, like the fire station at 84. It was basically raised, it was basically leveled out and rebuilt. You have to make those periodically. And when you get into that period, you do have a case where your revenue and your expenditures are not the same. That's what reserves are for, is to supplement that for capital improvements. So that's what's been going on.
Thank you, John. The next question is yours. How can you attract businesses to El Dorado Hills and not impact our quality of life?
Well, the business park is a prime opportunity, I think, to attract really good businesses. We can also attract retail stores, Town Center East, Town Center West. There's a lot of things that can still be done there. But basically, the business park is an incomplete opportunity in terms of the things that can be done in terms of bringing new jobs, new businesses, and really some economic growth to our community that would not have a substantial impact. There will be some road traffic impacts, but the roads down there have been designed, I think they're pretty much accommodated. There are some traffic signal things that probably need to be changed, but in all cases, there's a way to solve that problem. So what I've always looked at is we need to do something to revitalize the business park. And I got involved with the discussions with some of the business park owners in terms of what is their vision for the future. A lot of us who are involved with a group here in El Dorado Hills, it was called CDAC EDH, looked at what are the things we could possibly do. And rebranding of the business park to change the R&D context of it and to create some new opportunities for businesses to move here, new jobs for our kids to take. That's what I'm all about. There's a discussion that started. The business park owners really need to be the core group that establishes that new vision. But as supervisor, I'll support that vision and do what we can to make sure that we encourage new businesses and growth in El Dorado Hills.
Yeah.
This is the thing that I'm most excited about. I have worked regionally with business owners, and I'm really excited. I agree with you. The business park is there and too many vacancies. So it would be nice to attract regional and out of the region businesses. Why is it that I'm always going down the hill to do ribbon cuttings in Sac County, in Folsom? Foxborough opened up. Support Pay just opened up down in Sac County, because they extend benefits to small businesses. To them, to small business, they're saying open door, come on, we're open for business. So Kevin Johnson provided a financial incentive, some tax exemptions, but I don't see that happening at the El Dorado County level. I'd like to see that. I think that would be really exciting. This should be a regional hub of economic growth, innovation, technology. Look at all the brains and all the creativity of our residents here in El Dorado Hills. We've got employees from Intel and Aerojet and Aero Metals. And by the way, Aero Metals, they make helicopters. I don't know if anybody's been there in the business park. They're looking to expand. And Rex told me, the owner of Aero Metals, told me that he got slapped with a $337,000 bill to pull a permit, for permit fees. $337,000 to grow. He's gonna double his business. He's gonna have 150 employees, many of them veterans. He's providing jobs, he's a job creator. And yet he's being slapped with that. Oh, and add on the $95,000 mitigation, traffic mitigation fee. So that's why we're not having a lot of businesses attracted here. I will work with GSAC, Greater Sacramento. I will work with GoBiz, the governor's economic development team. I've already spoken with them. I have a great relationship with them, and I look forward to working with local chambers and other regional leaders.
Okay, the next question is for Beth first, on traffic. Beside the traffic on Highway 50, what other traffic problem areas do you identify in El Dorado Hills?
Well, I think we all know that Highway 50 is a mess, and it's not all of our people that are on Highway 50, it's everyone else. And so we have to be very careful. Our roads are crumbling, like I said in the beginning. We're paying these high taxes, state and local taxes, and yet we have crumbling roads. So I've been called out I've talked to neighbors, and they've shown me their roads, and it's a mess. But I talked to Don Ashton, the CAO of El Dorado County, and he says all we need is your priorities. So if it's a priority, that's how it fits in the budget. So budgets are all about priorities. I will put that as a high priority, is fixing these crumbling roads. It's very important, and it'll help a lot.
John?
So in addition to Highway 50, there's probably 6 major circulators in El Dorado Hills that create major problems, particularly during the morning commute hours and sometimes during the afternoon commute hours. First and foremost is El Dorado Hills Boulevard, because that is the response of the backup that happens on Highway 50 when we have all the traffic trying to get on in the morning. I've sat out there waving a sign in the morning and watched the lines of traffic line up and multiple signal changes to get the traffic through. So El Dorado Hills Boulevard definitely gets impacted. We got people going down to the business park that can't get down without multiple traffic changes. And we've got people trying to get on Highway 50. So El Dorado Boulevard is one of the main. Green Valley Road is another one. And unfortunately, Green Valley Road is partly complicated by the fact that it goes from 4 lanes on the El Dorado County side to 2 lanes when you get down on the Folsom side. Fortunately, the city of Folsom is going to correct that problem. They are going to expand it to 4 lanes. My understanding that project's in the 2018 type of time frame, subject to change. But that will happen eventually, so that's going to help the Green Valley Road. Bass Lake Road is another major issue relative to the traffic that goes down Bass Lake Road at high speeds. In that case, there's a lot of construction vehicles, big heavy trucks and stuff that are going down that road, and that creates a lot of potholing problems as well. There are no weight restrictions on those roads, so as long as they meet the state's requirements for legal limits, you can have very heavy construction trucks going back and forth, and they're paying gas taxes and stuff for that road maintenance, presumably. But it's tearing the roads up at a faster rate than we're getting the money to repair them. So that's a major issue we have to look at. In addition to that, White Rock Road coming in, and also Latrobe Road to a certain extent, but more White Rock. It gets very compacted, and from the standpoint of traffic changes and stuff. And again, it's a difficult road to drive with all of the windiness that happens more on the Sacramento side than the El Dorado Hills side. But in addition to that, Serrano Parkway can get very busy. But the bottom line is any place that we have a school in El Dorado Hills is a major bottleneck in the morning and the afternoons. And we have a way of lining up all these schools in one boulevard, such as Silver Valley Parkway, such that one right after another, you've got all these schools, different time frames, the kids are coming in and going out, and those are creating real bottlenecks. That needs to be looked at too.
John, the next question is rebuttal, 30 seconds.
I think really bottom line for these local roads is we do pay a lot of money. And where does that money go? It goes up to Placerville. We need to be a priority here. Since we pay so much of that money and it goes up the hill, we don't need to be subsidizing other parts of El Dorado County. We need to have that money come back down and work for us. And that's what I want to make sure happens.
Okay, the next question, and John, you're first on
Okay.
this one. It's about traffic also. If elected, what would you do to reduce current El Dorado Hills traffic congestion as well as traffic generated by future development? Please be specific in your response.
So one of the things we need to do is to be able to expand the capacity of our roadways. And I'll give you a prime example. Saratoga Estates is a project that's being proposed. For those of you who may not know, it's adjacent to Highway 50. It's kind of the infill between where Ridgeview is, going if you're at the south end of Ridgeview and where El Dorado Boulevard is. But it would connect up to Iron Point Road in Folsom, Empire Ranch Road, Iron Point Road. That connection will take a lot of traffic off of Highway 50, for instance. The way it's planned right now is that Wilson Boulevard will come over and connect into Saratoga Way. Wilson Boulevard will be a 2-lane road. Saratoga Way will be a 2-lane road to that intersection. And from the intersection westward, it will go to 4 lanes. So it will match up with the 4-lane road that the city of Folsom has, where it's currently at the barrier level. Now the difference, as I understand it, we proposed as APAC, which I've been a member of for 32 years, a landscaped median and a 4-lane road to match exactly what Folsom has. Sounds like we're going to get a 4-lane road but no landscape median. So we can't achieve the standards that the city of Folsom has, even though with our revenue base. But that's what we keep stressing with DOT. So there's a number of things you can do, signalization. But the bottom line is you need to improve the capacity of the road. You need to put more lanes in where they're absolutely necessary. And we need to look sometimes at how we phase certain activities, like start work, various businesses and stuff, to try to minimize the traffic congestion. And the school's already done it to a certain extent, but there may be some ways we can work with the businesses to try to eliminate some of that traffic as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so you brought up the connector, that will ease some traffic. It gives a good alternative for Highway 50, but we need to watch that and how it's built and make sure that we're not having a bunch of traffic dumped south of 50 in El Dorado Hills. So we've got a lot of building going on west of El Dorado Hills. There are 11,000 homes going in Folsom, south of 50, and 38,000 homes going in south of 50 in Rancho Cordova. So we have to be really careful, and I'm happy about that connector going in, that we can use it, but we need to make sure that it's not going to dump a bunch of traffic in El Dorado Hills, south of 50.
Thank you. The next question, Beth, is for you first. Measure E was to stop the Board of Supervisors from approving new land use changes without the proper infrastructure in place to support new development. Do you support or oppose Measure E? Why or why not?
Well, initially there was the first Measure E, which I thought was a debacle, since it was supported by people in this room, my opponent for sure, and also Parker Development, I think, supported that and got his people to vote for it. So it was 91-9, and it was an advisory vote. So it did basically nothing, except it might have launched a couple of people's career politically. And I think that's a waste of tax dollars. $103,000 is a lot of money for an advisory vote. What does an advisory vote do? It tells your supervisor what you think you want them to know. Why not just elect a strong supervisor who can truly represent, listen to all sides, and truly represent the people when it comes to development? I've never supported ballot box planning. I don't think people should be voting and planning from the ballot box. That's why you elect your supervisor to represent you. It's also a litigation nightmare, and that's where we are right now, in litigation for who knows how long. And what happens in litigation is, you know who gets rich? The lawyers get rich, and the taxpayers pay. So we're all going to be paying for that too. Didn't support it.
I was a strong supporter of the last Measure E. And the reason is, like the measure said, no more paper roads. We have had a history in El Dorado County of seeing development go in, the developers contribute funds to a fund account, basically, to pay for new roads. And the roads don't get put in when they're planned. They don't get put in when the impacts happen. They may be 5 years later, 10 years later, or never. Measure E was put on the ballot to send a strong message to the Board of Supervisors that that's not good enough. We have to have road improvements consistent with the projects. If a project has an impact that creates level of service F on our roadways, they have to pay and facilitate expanding those roadways to minimize that back to level service E or lower. With cumulative traffic effects, you have to look at those kinds of things. So Measure E was absolutely essential, like the previous vote was, to send a message to the Board of Supervisors that the residents of El Dorado Hills are not happy with the way we're being treated. And we all need to recognize District 1 is one vote, and there's 4 other votes on the Board of Supervisors. So one strong vote doesn't mean anything. You lose every time, 3-2, 4-1, whatever. So the key is you have to establish relationships with people, you have to work with them, you have to have trust, and you have to be able to work out arrangements where another district supervisor may benefit from something you think is a little marginal, but you're going to get something in kind. That's the way the system has to work, or you're always going to lose. There has been a big flow of monies from El Dorado Hills to Placerville that we don't see back in El Dorado Hills. They go to other parts of the county. But you have to recognize the Board of Supervisors in total, the 5 members, their responsibility is to serve all the needs, all the residents, all the taxpayers across the county. And they have to try to do that in a distributed fashion. So even though we would like to have local control of the money that we send to come back here, that's only going to happen with a corporation. It isn't going to happen with the way the county operates today. We can fight for, we can negotiate, we can work towards getting more money back in El Dorado Hills, but it takes 3 votes to do it.
John, the next question. How do you intend to implement Measure E as was voted in as the will of the people?
Well, Measure E, unfortunately, when you have ballot measures, it's very, very difficult to write a concise measure that changes policy, which is what the general plan is. General plan is a set of policies. Measure E went in and identified specific areas of the general plan where we were proposing policy changes. When you do that, you have to try to keep it short, to the point, and make sure that it's well understood. But the difficulty is the well understood, because there's a lot of other policies that are related to the policies you propose changing. So there are things that have to be looked at. We worked as a group with county council, with the planning department, to arrange and define a set of conditions that we could apply Measure E with, that we thought would basically be consistent with the intent of the voters, but still would allow us to make those interpretations where necessary in the general plan to make it flow from the standpoint of understanding when improvements have to be made. Unfortunately, our Board of Supervisors decided not to accept that. They voted against it, which was basically telling our planning department, you guys are on your own, you figure it out, and it actually almost promotes the litigation part of it. So I really question some of the motivations of the supervisors who decided to do that. But that was their decision, so now we have to work with it. So we're still trying to develop an agreement that we can work with that applies Measure E uniformly, but doesn't get us into that continuous litigation process. But if people don't want to work with you, they don't want to negotiate, they just want to take it to court, you end up with the result you end up with.
Beth?
Well, I absolutely agree that developers should pay their fair share, and it's not right to develop and then not keep the roads up and as promised. So those covenants need to be very strong. I did not support Measure E. I don't know how you could work with county council and the Board of Supervisors and the planning department and come up with such a plan. As I understand it, the developer would be required to improve and upgrade the roads, mitigate all traffic before they know whether or not their development, their project would be approved or not. It just, as a small businesswoman and as a business owner, that just does not make sense. Measure E it never did make sense to me, and I'm shocked to hear that county council would have worked in devising such a plan.
The next question.
Can I rebut that? County council worked with the resident group to try to define a method of implementing Measure E consistent with what the voters approved, but basically putting the interpretation in place as to how it affects other policies, to make it as smooth of implementation as possible. And that's what we thought we achieved with that until the Board of Supervisors turned it down. So County Council was not involved with the original Measure E. They were involved only with the implementation and how does the county deal with that part of it. I thought we came up with a very constructive approach. Everybody was basically in agreement. Unfortunately, the Board of Supervisors denied it.
Thank you. The next question is for Beth first. It's a two-part question. Do you support the general plan amendment projects that have caused so much controversy? Dixon Ranch, Central El Dorado Hills, Marble Valley, Lime Rock Valley, and Sandstino. And the second part is, do you understand why they have caused so much controversy?
Well, let's see, I'm going to be sticking with the voter-approved general plan. And I think that that's important to do that. I think that rezoning is something that has been taken very seriously with traffic mitigation. Traffic's the roads. We need to fix the roads before we improve or approve any projects. Our school, Oak Ridge High School, and others are impacted and beyond capacity. So I don't think that that would be a wise decision. As far as any specific plan or project, I think it would be irresponsible for me to comment on it without seeing the plans and talking with all the neighbors and hearing the input. And I will be making decisions once I hear everybody's input.
John?
Having been a member and a leader of APAC for 32 years, I can tell you that my opinion is we are being pushed with overdevelopment in El Dorado Hills. And by that, I mean overdensification. Too many dwelling units trying to squeeze into an acre of property. I recognize there's an economic aspect of that. But most of us on APAC have looked at things like the town center apartments and have said, that's not a bad concept. It's just overscale. When you put 55, actually it was like 61 dwelling units per acre into a piece of property that's been zoned to allow 24, you kind of broke all the rules. So why are you breaking the rules? So the difficulty, I think, is the projects as proposed and working on APAC are not done well. The amenities are good, but it's just too dense. We need to reduce the density down to something more reasonable. We're looking at applications coming into APAC that are 3,000, 3,500 square foot lots. Most of us who moved here some time ago own a half-acre lot. Half-acre lot is 24,000 square feet. And now we're looking at something that's almost 1/10 that size, 15% that size is supposed to be a new dwelling space. Now, under certain conditions where you have a workplace that's very close to that, and that's what it takes to get workforce housing and stuff, maybe that's a consideration. But in general, that's the problem that we have, is that the developers, and the state's pushing this, is over-densification, trying to squeeze too many people into too small an area. The major impact of that is our roadways and our schools and every other service we receive. So we need to slow that down. We need to get it back to the right level.
The next question is for John first. Please clearly state your position on the proposal to develop the executive golf course with infill housing, and state specifically what you have done during the last 2 years to support your position.
I'm very much against infill housing on a 98-acre golf course. Now, again, going back to the APAC conditions, the Central El Dorado Hills specific plan, which is being proposed by the Parker Development Company, and that's the proposal that goes to the Board of Supervisors, is 341 acres. There are parts of that, obviously, that don't include the golf course. Parts of it that were called in subdivision named Pendragon, which is downslope from where Ridgeview is and close to El Dorado Boulevard. That particular project is a separate project. The development north of the fire station, where we're hoping to get a Center for the Ages, a senior facility type orientation, would be used by all the community. That's also part of that development. So I'm not opposed to the whole development. Again, I think it's over-densified in certain areas, but I am opposed to losing our 98-acre open space recreational use. The Tony Mansur and Mansur Company owned that property before they sold it to Parker. In conversations with Mr. Mansur, the thing he's told me that was one of his biggest regrets is that he did not lock that piece of property up in perpetuity as open space. He sold it to Parker as an operating golf course, and then it got changed. So I'm very strongly in support of maintaining that open space, and maybe you can negotiate something where 50 acres for a community park site, the CSD would have to put that in, is a reasonable exchange for that, for allowing some development to go in that's lower density. But there needs to be some kind of negotiation involved. It can't just be, we can't fund it, and it can't just be, we're gonna put a lot of these townhomes, condominiums, apartments on it. There needs to be a better solution. I think that solution is the obvious, but it takes people willing to sit down and talk about it and find a reasonable middle ground. That's what hasn't happened. So I would encourage our CSD board to work with the Parker Development Company. As a supervisor, I would want to be involved with some of those discussions as long as it didn't become a conflict of economic interest somehow. The county can't participate in funding it. But if we can help do the negotiation, that's what I think needs to happen.
Beth?
As I said before, I will stick to the general plan. It is zoned, it was voter approved, and it is zoned recreational and open space. So there are some parks that we can look at if that's what they decide. But I think the key word that John said is negotiation. And that's what I do in my current job at the Capitol. I'm the whip, and I listen to all sides, no matter what the party is, and we come to a reasonable decision. But I am not interested in rezoning that area.
Thank you. The next question will be for Beth first. How do you balance the budget if you are not building houses for new facilities and are known as a no-growth county? What businesses would want to relocate here?
Not very many, and that's the problem. But we do have to look at alternatives from rooftops and sales tax. I think it's important, like I said, to market that business park. We need to get it vibrant and an innovative hub. I think that excites me. I hope that excites other people too. Technology with all the creativity in El Dorado Hills. I know there are small businesses that would look up the hill from Sacramento County, because my mind always goes there. They're hiring down there. They have incentives down there. Let's provide some incentives at that business park and let people know all over the world, because Ireland sent Boxpro, and nesting is going to move down to Sac County if we're not careful. And we don't know. I have a lot of people that I work with regionally. I work with GSAC, Greater Sacramento. I work with GoBiz, the Governor's Economic Development. I know these people. I want to attract people in the business park. I need to get that message out that we are open for business, and that will provide great basis for sales tax.
One of the things that I think we all need to recognize when it comes down to economic development in some of these growth areas is that we've got a lot of competition very close by. The strongest competition is probably the city of Folsom. You go beyond that, it's Rancho Cordova. And they have offered incentives to the businesses to come to that area. El Dorado County has entertained that for many, many years. I personally think that there can be some form of incentive that gets us somewhat competitive to try to bring businesses to El Dorado County. But we have to be careful we don't give away the farm for a business that comes here for a short period of time and it goes belly up. Most of us recognize what happened with the disc company that was down south of Highway 50 here for about 3 years. Then they went bankrupt and they moved out. It's an empty shell, an empty building, and we don't get property tax, and we don't get sales tax. So you have to attract the right kind of businesses, and you have to make sure that those businesses are providing jobs to people. And because one of the major things that we have is a shortage of jobs. There's 17,000 approved parcels in El Dorado County that can be built on today. So when people say there's a housing shortage, we can't build houses, they don't know what they're talking about. Within El Dorado Hills area, there's over 8,000 parcels available to be built on today. You can call them infill lots, you can call them approved subdivisions, but there is no shortage of available lots to be built on. So when people argue to you that you have to build more rooftops to attract the businesses, we can build more rooftops, they're already approved. We don't need to approve all these additional developments at the densities they're proposing to accomplish that. In fact, you get just the opposite effect when you do that. When you approve that, it ends up costing you more money, and there's a lot of studies that have been done, because unless you really establish good fees up front, development fees, you'll find that you fall short in terms of the implementation of really providing the services, the improvements and stuff associated with the impacts of that particular project.
John, the next question is for you first.
Yep.
What impact do you believe adding thousands of additional residents to El Dorado Hills will have on property values, crime, and traffic?
Property values are primarily driven by the economy and the desire of people to live in our community. It's something that just by approving projects you aren't going to affect. El Dorado Hills has a huge positive reputation nationally now in terms of an affluent community that people would like to live in. We offer a lot of different services. We have great schools. There's a lot of desire for people to move to El Dorado Hills. And in fact, that's what we're seeing with a lot of the migration from the Bay Area and Los Angeles is people who have retired have decided to move to El Dorado Hills. The difficulty with that is if we don't plan the road surfaces properly, if we don't plan the commercial buildings properly to handle the services that people are looking for, if we really don't have a good plan, we're not going to achieve what we want. One of the key things that I think that this community needs, and we've never even talked about it, is a cemetery. How fundamental is a cemetery in a community of 45,000 people? I mean, we may not want to talk about it, but it seems like it's something we ought to address and define within our planning. Where is a location that's suitable to put a cemetery in El Dorado Hills? So it's those kinds of things that very few people think about, but ultimately have to be provided. But when you bring in people, you're going to have increase in traffic, which means the roads have to be expanded. We all have to be flexible a little bit. But the thing I don't want to see diminished is the services that the county provides to each individual from the standpoint of the ability to keep our roads maintained, to keep our law enforcement services at a high enough level. And with respect to law enforcement, that's one of the key areas that I think we need to work on from the standpoint of establishing more budget. The sheriff has told us that he is at 2004 staffing levels today, and he actually reached a peak about 2007, 2008 before the recession. So he has had essentially no increase in his staffing, despite the fact that we've had about a 20% growth in population in the county. So how long can that continue? See, that's one of these effects that happens. You move more and more people in, you don't find the budget for additional law enforcement, and the net result is we get longer response times. That's got to be corrected.
Yeah.
Home values are very important. I want to keep those home values up. This is a very unique place to live. It's just, we have all these wonderful services. However, crime is a big problem. And in speaking with the sheriff, he has assured me that there are 4 to 6 patrol cars at all times, 24/7, plus a captain driving around in the neighborhoods. And I'm thinking that we should all be seeing sheriffs in our neighborhoods. I want to make sure that they're not on El Dorado Hills Boulevard or Highway 50 or some of these main arteries, but actually in our neighborhoods. We need them, and it's not getting better, especially with what the propositions in AB 109, it's all coming to fruition in our neighborhoods. So one thing that will help is that I do have regional relationships with law enforcement. Cindy Renault has been at my annual women's conference almost every year. She's been a speaker. She's wonderful. She's the chief of police in Folsom. She has given me calls in the past. Remember in 2014 there was a whole trend, because crime happens in trends. Coming through, she said, hey, it's going up East Sacramento, up Highway 50, coming toward El Dorado Hills Boulevard. You need to watch out because people are kicking out windows. Remember the car burglaries. So we know what to look for if we have regional relationships with other law enforcement. It's really important. And I said it before, I'll say it again. We spend a lot of money for the sheriff's department. It all goes up to Placerville. We need to be darn sure that we get the services right here in El Dorado Hills Boulevard, or in El Dorado Hills. I don't see a need for raising taxes. It is priority. It's a budget, it's priority. Make sure that we get what we pay for.
Let me rebut this. I agree it's a priority. It needs to be a priority. The sheriff proposed 24 additional positions in this last budget. He was denied all of those positions. The board basically, through their financial director and other people, basically conveyed a message to all the department heads, you're not going to get any more money than you got last year. That's got to change. What I'm going to bring to county government is an approach to improve the efficiency and effectiveness that will save a lot of time in all the operations and will net us cost savings, i.e. additional monies to be spent for improved services. road maintenance, sheriff's office, but we need to get a more efficient government to do it. It doesn't take new taxes. It just needs to be, we need to be smarter about the way we do things, and we need to establish some high morale with the workforce that's up in county. They provide great services, but I personally think we have an issue between some of the top directors and middle managers and the really working staff in the trenches that's got to be addressed. And I don't think that's difficult to do.
Thank you.
And, yeah, excuse me, but I do absolutely agree that we need to support the sheriff. Crime is of the top two things that we need to look at and be really careful of for El Dorado Hills. So supporting the sheriff is absolutely imperative. And like we said, budgets are priorities. We need to make sure we support him so that he sends people down here to keep us safe.
Okay, and with this next question here, because it was, I know it has been, but there's so many people here and there's so many questions, I didn't think
So
you
Beth gets us
longer. What do you believe are the 3 top concerns of the residents in El Dorado Hills?
I would say the 3 top concerns in El Dorado Hills would be crime, traffic, and we need to have open accessibility with the current leader. And I have a history and a background in all 3 of those areas.
John?
So I would agree, rising crime, our law enforcement boots on the ground is definitely one of them. Traffic is a major concern. Road maintenance is also a very major concern. We're getting a lot of potholing on our roads because we haven't put the proper preventative surfaces down on our roadways because there's no budget for it. This last budgeting cycle, when they started it, the Board of Supervisors were basically at a point where they were saying, we can't provide any discretionary funds for road maintenance. Unfortunately, that changed. There are a couple $1 million now that are being spent for road maintenance, but if you talk to the crews that are doing the road maintenance, they tell you it's a Band-Aid. They need twice that much if we're ever going to start to recover and get our roads back to where they should be, because we have had so much deferred maintenance on our roadways. So roadways are a major part of it because that affects the traffic and it affects the costs of everybody in here through replacement of tires at a much shorter rate, through wheel alignments, and then all of the potential for accidents that can happen because of potholing and other bad road services.
John, you get to answer this one
Okay.
first. Both the State Water Resources Board and the governor are controlling sale of our permitted water and future access to our permitted water. What have you done, or what would you do? What have you done in the past, and what will you do in the future to protect the water to which we already have rights?
Okay, there's 2 types of water rights. There's the pre-1914 water rights, which are the senior water rights, and those have been protected. Those are kind of like the county of origin water rights. El Dorado County has some of that. There's a lot of other rights that happened after 1914 that are junior water rights. So in periods of drought, what happens is they start eliminating or reducing the amount of water delivery to those individuals or those agencies that have the junior water rights. So preserving our senior water rights and not giving them up is a key part of that. One of the things that we looked at way before Measure Y started, I was in a group that was looking at a ballot measure that was called Water Traffic Initiative, because we recognized the issue associated with water supply in El Dorado County. And it's a countywide issue. I think our EID board has done a reasonable job of providing water resources, but the costs are outrageous. And every time we go and look at the meetings and stuff that are being proposed, they're talking about further and further cost increases. That's got to be dealt with. But the biggest issue I think a lot of us in El Dorado County are facing is there's 2 types of water. There's surface water and there's groundwater. The surface water is visible, it's controllable. The EID's done a pretty good job of managing it. The groundwater supply is what's being depleted in El Dorado County. And if you want to see something that diminishes property values in rural areas, when you can't get water out of your well, and you've got a 350, 400 foot well, that property value is almost worthless. You can't sell that piece of property. So we need to be able to understand and manage the groundwater supply as well as the surface water supply. EID is applying for additional water rights, and that's kind of a big subject. I personally support it to the point where if it's really viable, you can do that. But there's a lot of people that have the opinion that we'll never be granted additional water rights. So why invest $6-7 million pursuing it if we're never going to get it? I'm not close enough to that issue to be able to assess it is viable or not. But we have to be careful. We don't throw good money after bad. We're not going to be able to acquire additional water rights.
Beth?
I've always fought hard for areas and counties of origin for water rights. We have to be very careful with our counties of origin for water rights. I've worked closely with EID and members of EID for years. I've spoken on behalf of El Dorado County to the State Water Board. I've written letters on behalf of El Dorado County, and those are usually because as a result of EID coming to me and asking me to do that and represent El Dorado County. Let's make no mistake, the state and the governor, they want our water, and they'll do just about anything to get our water. That's why I fought the twin tunnels. I've always fought the twin tunnels. They'll do anything to get it down south. So that's what we have to be careful of. Folsom is being used as a source of water. It was never intended to be a source of water for anyone south of them. And they're using Folsom to flesh out the delta. So there are a lot of problems with water. We've got to keep our eyes on the rates because EID is very expensive. It's outrageous. It's some of the highest in the whole region. And I've also fought when the Water Board was putting the highest restrictions in the state on us when we're the counties of origin and we have the highest restrictions. You know, the Bay Area, San Francisco, they were dealing with 8% reduction and we were at 24. So I remember that, and I remember going before the Water Board and expressing our disdain for that.
And now this is the last question. It's a two-part question, and Beth is first. Where do you see yourself, and what will you be doing in 2020, and why do you think you are the best candidate?
I hope I'm running for re-election in 2020, and I hope I will have done a good job, and that you would honor me with your votes. I will try really hard. My kids will be, let's see, I automatically think of my children. There are 6 children. They'll all be a lot older. Did you see in 4 years? 4 years.
Which would be, yes, 2020.
So my oldest will be 32. And I'm excited about watching them grow up. Our business has been running for 50 years. And so I'm hoping that that'll be busy and thriving, and I hope the business park will be busy and thriving and growing. And I see a lot of great things that could happen in El Dorado Hills. I particularly think of the business park. I just think that it would be wonderful if more of us could go over Highway 50 to get to work instead of getting on 50 and going down. So I'm looking forward to going up the hill to an office in Placerville.
And the second part of the question is, why do you think you are the best candidate?
I think I'm the best candidate because I'm a business owner and I'm not a politician. I've been doing this for 6 years and this is my first elected office. I will be completing my term in December, and I haven't been on a board serving and managing or mismanaging a budget for 38 years. And so I think I've been a great
Please, everybody.
I've been a great fiscal watchdog. I'll be careful with tax dollars. And I think that government should be small and efficient and held accountable to taxpayers. And I think a lot of people agree with me because I'm getting tired of pulling out of our paycheck all this money that goes to a big bloated government and then watching no services come out of it. So that's why I think I'd be the best. I'm a fiscal conservative, I'm a business owner, I'm a mom of 6 kids, and I think I'm qualified for the job.
John?
And in 2020, I would hope to be running for re-election to the Board of Supervisors. I have no ambitions for any other position. I'm retired. I want to serve my community, El Dorado County and El Dorado Hills. I have no interest in anything beyond that other than taking care of my family and eventually living out my retirement. So I'll commit to that. With respect to why am I best, I have 35 years of experience in El Dorado Hills, understanding what this community has grown to be, what its needs are. Through my involvement with the fire department, through my involvement with the community council, through my involvement with APAC, I have a well-rounded understanding of what we need in terms of services and what's happened in the past that hasn't been done well and what needs to be done right. For instance, I'll give you an example. If any of you are familiar with the Marina Valley Junior High School area and stuff, the 2-lane road that goes in and out of that, APAC fought adamantly to try to make that a 4-lane road. And that's when only Marina Valley School was there. We recognize that when you have schools, you have a lot of parents driving, you have a lot of school buses, you have a lot of traffic. You need to put in 4 lanes. Through the wisdom of our DOT and county and the Board of Supervisors, that got approved as a 2-lane road. For those of us who live out in that area, we know what that means. Every time they try to do landscape maintenance, you're stuck on the side of the road, you have to slow down and go by very carefully. Every time there's an event at the school, open house or something or other, the roads are all jammed. Every time there's a morning commute and an afternoon commute, the roads are all jammed to the point that a lot of us avoid that. We try to go around it. So that's an example of poor planning. I've been involved in recommending doing the right things. You build the infrastructure at the time you have the opportunity and do it right. You don't shortchange it. You don't argue that you don't need it. You just build it. Because a lot of times the developers are forced to pay that cost of the development. Sometimes it's reimbursable, so it just depends on the circumstances. But that's one of the major things. I would be best because I'm going to bring my private enterprise, private sector experience into the public sector. And I want to change the way we do government.
Before I ask the candidates to give their closing statements, I would like to thank everyone for coming. I hope tonight that you were able to gain some insight into making your decisions at the ballot on November 8th. And so for the closing comments, Beth, you can start first.
That pretty much was my closing.
Yeah, I know.
So I think that I'd be the best candidate because I have business experience, I've run a business, I've raised my kids. I've seen a lot of bureaucrats and I've seen a lot of bloated government, and I just don't agree with it. I think that the government never made California great, the people made California great. The government never made El Dorado Hills great, but the people do. The people make it unique, and I'm excited to represent El Dorado Hills.
Thank you. John.
So one of the things I think we need to look forward to, and why I believe that I'm the best candidate, and why I'm running for this election, is that the county for many, many years has not had a solid strategic plan. Strategic planning is all about where are we going in the future? What are we going to do to anticipate, to plan for, to put aside the necessary funding to plan for the future? That's strategic planning. I was very honored to serve as part of the strategic planning committee, working with Don Ashton, who's our current CAO, in the health and human services area. We established a set of goals. We established a set of metrics, i.e. measures, to determine how we were meeting those goals. It was the first time, it was recognized by a number of people, that there was a collaborative effort by a lot of nonprofit, special agencies, and the government agencies to work together to determine how they were going to deliver services to the people who needed it. And there's 2 primary areas that they were trying to serve. People who have substance abuse issues and people who have mental health issues. Those are the 2 primary areas they have to serve. I think they're somewhat related, or can be at least, but those are the areas. So that was well defined. We have a set of strategic plan now for the whole county that deals with a number of things. Good governance, transparency in governance. I fully support all of that. I think Don Ashton and the group of people out there established a good plan, a good framework for this county to develop and grow itself in the right direction. But it needs to be supported by people who believe in strategic planning and not just making decisions based upon emotion. It's got to be based upon analysis, based upon forecasts, and based upon good decision making. And that's what I bring to this job, is a long history of analysis and decision making. I've been a program manager, I've been an assistant engineer in my career, and I know how to work and establish the basis for making decisions based upon data, not emotion. Data-driven decision making is what I want to see at the county, and I'll bring that. So I would appreciate your vote in the November election.
Let's give both candidates